There are a ton of car brands out there, and these days it's tough to tell who's making quality and who's making crap. So we're gonna try to make it easier for you. We've ranked all of the major car brands and put them in this list. And while most brands you see out there are owned by only about 14 different car companies, using JD Power surveys, a few other metrics, and of course my personal taste, I'm gonna tell you from worst to best what brands should be banned and what logos you should look out for. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and let's go. All right, we're gonna go from worst to best, and there are a ton of brands to go through. I think there's like 30. So we're only gonna stick to basically pedestrian brands. If this video does well enough, we'll make one about exotic cars too. Now, let's get the worst out of the way. Land Rover. Yeah, I'm gonna make this real quick. I'm ranking Land Rover last for a really good reason. I owned one. Don't own one. Don't buy a Land Rover. Certainly don't buy a Land Rover Discovery. I don't need any stats or surveys or metrics or customer satisfaction numbers. Land Rover is the worst. All right, enough said. Next, another brand you should avoid like the plague is Chrysler.
Merry Chrysler. Merry Chrysler.
They may as well rename this brand to Crapler, because that's what they make, absolute crap. They're like the dollar store of car brands. And it's not just my opinion, this is basically fact. They rank lowest in the JD Power surveys regularly and average 113 faults per 100 cars sold. That's right, they make more faults than they make cars. That's not good. You'd think a company that's been around 100 years or so would know how to make a car by now. Now, that being said, I wouldn't kick anything with the SRT8 label on it out of bed. Now, the next brand isn't quite Chrysler bad, but it is something you might find on the road dead. Now, this one actually kind of surprised me. I kind of hold Ford to a high regard. I'll probably even own a Raptor at some point in my life, but that might not be such a great idea. You see, Ford is an all-around disgrace right now compared to its glory days. But even though they've fallen off in terms of quality, they still remain one of the most popular brands in the world. However, most people who own a Ford will tell you that they're kind of a hunk of junk. They score nearly dead even with Chrysler in terms of customer satisfaction. But hey, at least their cars are a little more reliable, coming in at less than 100 faults per 100 cars. But that's setting the bar pretty low. Now, a brand synonymous with unreliability is definitely Dodge. Boy, us Americans really are number one. Number one at making shit cars. Like Ford, cars that bear the Dodge emblem are, you guessed it, pretty awful. Customer satisfaction amongst Dodge owners is depressingly low. And it's probably because Dodges are about as reliable as your pothead friend. Now, we're no stranger to Dodges here at Ideal. In fact, Brad and Trav bought a ridiculously cheap Dodge Viper a while ago. And yeah, if that car is any indicator of the quality of a Dodge vehicle, they deserve this spot on the list. Now, American companies aren't the only ones building crap out there. If we're talking Asian brands, you definitely don't want to buy a Mitsubishi. Now, Mitsubishi might make decent televisions and air conditioners, but they really make some really cars. The Mitsubishi Mirage, for instance, is a car? That's about all I can say about it. Sadly, the brand that brought us the legendary Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution and the tuner car icon, the Eclipse, and my personal favorite, the Delica, it's definitely gone down in quality over the years. In fact, it ranks 30th of 32 in initial quality by JD Power. Next up is no surprise, especially when you know how much disdain I have for the British. Yeah, Jaguar. This is often the choice of British super secret agents, but should definitely not be a choice of regular-ass American. This British luxury car brand is closely aligned with Land Rover, and for that reason alone, you should really steer clear of a Jag. Not to mention it ranks near the bottom in terms of customer satisfaction amongst luxury brands. Don't be lulled in by that exhaust note on the Jag XF. Avoid this predator cat, if at all possible. And speaking of poorly made luxury cars, next up we have Genesis. Now, Genesis isn't really a big surprise being this low on the list. They're relatively new, pretty cheap, and they're basically just Hyundais. But they are getting better. Like the new G80 that was just announced that seems to have a lot going for it. I do expect over the next few years that the Genesis brand will start climbing the rank. And let's just knock this next one off the list real quick. Hyundai. Yeah, Hyundai earns a spot just one above Genesis, simply because it's essentially the same cars, with a smaller price tag. I mean, you're getting a Hyundai either way, why spend more on the Genesis? All right, moving on. Yet another Asian luxury division that isn't doing so hot is Infiniti. Infiniti gets some bad marks because it's basically a luxury brand that owners after a while feel like they should have just got the economy version instead. And I love Nissans, I've owned a few myself. So it was kind of a surprise to me to learn that their luxury division, Infiniti, was getting some pretty low-end customer satisfaction numbers. Well, colored me shocked. The good news is, this means that depreciation on some of these cars is really strong. So you can get yourself a pretty sick used Q60 on the cheap and look like $1 million. Now, one brand that will not make you look like $1 million is definitely Fiat. Now, Fiat isn't quite as bad as its ultra crappy cousin Chrysler, but these Italian cars are far from stallions. They pretty much have nothing to do with the quality of a Ferrari. With cars like the 1978 Fiat Ritmo, a front-wheel drive subcompact that's basically a flimsy piece of garbage in the wind, it's not surprising that Fiat left the North American car market for 28 years, from 1983 to 2001. But what's really surprising is they didn't really learn anything on their time off, as modern Fiats are just as disastrous, ranking nearly dead last on vehicle dependability by J.D. Power, having over 190 issues per 100 cars. That's right, nearly double the amount of issues as they make cars. That is insane. Do not buy a Fiat. And while you're at it, don't buy a Kia. Kia basically got its start by taking old, outdated models from other brands and slapping their badge on it. So it's not really that much of a surprise that they don't make very good cars. In the more recent years though, they've started making their own cars. And it's worked out pretty well for them. They've certainly come a long way from their humble start, but there's still a long way to go for them to be really recommendable. Now, give me the keys to a Kia Stinger GT2, and I might bump Kia up a couple notches on this list. Next, we're gonna tell you why some Chevys should have been left at the levee. Now, Chevy is not the worst American car brand, but it's not the best. Of course, they've made some decent cars and trucks over the years, but let's never forget the SSR. Never forget the HHR. They are just terrible cars. Luckily, we can cleanse our palate by just looking at videos of the new C8. It is definitely a step in the right direction for Chevy. And if the reliability index is any indicator, it probably won't break down on you that much, which is more than can be said about this next brand. If you've seen some of our videos like unreliable trucks you need to avoid, you know that we like to take a couple digs at Ram on this channel. And that's because generally they deserve it. With Rams averaging about 105 issues per 100 vehicles, it's no wonder they're down here in the dump. Okay, that's no surprise. No one thinks Rams are all that reliable, but the next brand on our list actually came as a huge surprise to me. I always assumed Acuras are fantastic. Who wouldn't love an Acura? But as is sort of the trend here with luxury versions of pedestrian vehicles, Acura is yet another mark that misses the mark. Being the luxury segment of the Honda brand, you'd think Acura would be fantastic. But apparently customers do not agree. Their satisfaction ratings are not as good as the more pedestrian Honda brand, meaning you might be better off buying a Honda instead of an Acura. At least it'll be cheaper. And next up is Nissan, and this one hurts my fifis a little bit, but I do understand why it's in the bottom half of our list. Now, if you were just to ask J.D. Power, Nissan's actually a pretty decent brand, earning a 9 out of 10 in overall quality, but customer satisfaction ratings of Nissan have been consistently average. They're not the most reliable, they're not the prettiest, they're not the best performing, so it makes sense. Still, there is hope. The new 400Z is coming, and maybe a new GTR in a couple years. The future's looking bright for my brand, Nissan. All right, we're halfway home. There are a lot of brands on this list, and it's time for the best of the worst, the best brand of the bottom half, and that will be Volkswagen. Honestly, Volkswagen is an okay brand that had one major slip-up, Dieselgate. It put a huge stain on the brand when people found out that they were cheating on emissions tests, and it seems like they're still trying to recover from it. Also, Volkswagens don't tend to last very long. You don't want to buy a 5-year-old Volkswagen. It's not going to be very reliable. Either way, congrats Volkswagen on being the best of the worst brands. Now, next up is a surprise I did not expect to make it to the top half of my list, but the numbers pan out. Alfa Romeo is actually not as terrible as you think it is. Having been a fan of Top Gear for most of my life, I just assumed Alfa Romeos are garbage. But customers really seem to be enjoying their Alfa Romeo, and maybe it's because they're actually making desirable cars like the Giulia, which is as pretty as it is fast, and has some pretty amazing depreciation, so it's a cheap car that'll make you look rich. Now, this next brand has earned the trust of people worldwide, and is a little surprising to be so low on our list, and that brand is Mercedes-Benz. Now, it's no surprise that Mercedes-Benz ranks pretty high in customer satisfaction surveys, because people who own them are constantly talking about them. But it seems like Mercedes-Benz isn't doing quite as good as it seems. Their sales numbers are on kind of a downward spiral as people are opting for more budget-friendly brand. Still, Mercedes-Benz has those AMGs, which are some of the most awesomely powerful cars on the planet, like the AMG GTR, which spits out 577 horsepower, and certainly is no slouch when it comes to style. Or who could forget the luxury off-road 4x4 beast, the G-Wagon, which is an off-road icon, but not quite as iconic as Jeep. Okay, honestly, Jeep should be way lower on this list as an entire brand. Most of their cars are just forgettable garbage. And the new JL EcoDiesel Rubicon is so good, I had to bump Jeep up a couple of slots here. Now, I won't sling too much mud at Jeep, pun intended, but if they could make the rest of their lineup as iconic as their Halo 4x4, Jeep could truly be a force to be reckoned with. Now, the polar opposite of mountain-crushing off-roaders are the land-based luxury cruise ships built by Cadillac. Now, Cadillac undoubtedly has hit some bumps in its long history, but today it has emerged as a brand that generally leaves its customers quite happy. Cadillacs are basically never recalled, and that could be why their sales have been steadily increasing over the years. Another reason is definitely that V-Series, which with cars like the full-blown CTS-V, a supercharged sedan that comes with a stick shift, Cadillac is kind of making machines for people that appreciate the art of the car. Now, some of my favorite artists in the world of car crafting are the Krauts over at BMW. BMW creates high-quality cars that generally get good customer satisfaction. And with their M division, which makes cars that are just magnificent, I don't think that's what the M stands for, but I'm going with it. From coupes to hatchbacks, sedans, crossovers, SUVs, BMW has you covered. They make a car for everyone, and everyone seems to generally enjoy owning them, but not quite as much as people enjoy the next brand on our list. The world's most popular car brand, Toyota. Now, Toyota got that popular by making cars that last a lifetime. Overall, Toyota owners report excellent customer satisfaction. Their cars never break down. You have no reason to hate them. And if they do, repairs are relatively cheap. And reliability aside, Toyota still makes some pretty fun cars. Take the Mark V Supra, for instance, with the 2021 version spitting out 339 horsepower. And with Toyota reliability backing it, you'll be ripping the road with that thing for a lifetime. Now, next up is a brand with the best tech, VTEC. It's pretty difficult to go 5 minutes without seeing a Honda Civic on the road. Honda is a major reason why Japanese car makers have a reputation for reliability. But that's not all they bring to the table. The Civic Type R will make you rethink what a front-wheel drive street car is capable of. It handles beautifully and is a ton of fun to drive and is pretty budget-friendly. Plus, it's a Honda, so you know it'll last forever. Now, our next brand is popular amongst rich housewives, businessmen, and douchebags. And for good reason. It's Audi. Now here is finally a luxury car brand that delivers on its promise. Audis are known for being an absolute pleasure to drive, and for having beautiful interiors that are extremely comfortable and luxurious. It's a shame their exteriors are boring as hell to me. Now, probably the greatest testament to Audi's commitment to luxury is the A8L, a luxurious sedan with a lightweight body, premium interior design, and a range of top-of-the-line gadgets. And not just that, Audi gets a little clout for its relationship with brands like Lamborghini. Now, if you're not a rich suit-wearing douchebag that loves an Audi, you might be somebody that loves our next brand, Subaru. The Subaru brand has long commanded respect from the American market. They're safe, they're reliable, and they have pretty good performance, and they pretty much dominate the world of full-time all-wheel drive cars here in the States. Plus, it's not owned by some conglomerate, meaning the hippies who don't love supporting giant companies can find a little love in Subaru. And the reason it's not sitting at the bottom of our list, like their rival Mitsubishi, is that they still make their rally car for the streets that's a beast in the sheets, the Subaru Impreza. And for that, they definitely deserve a spot on this top 10. Now, let's think a little smaller. Boy, this is a long video, huh? In honor of this being the most minuscule brand on our list, let's keep this short. Or mini. Minis. They're pretty good. Let's zoom onto the next brand, shall we? Mazda. Mazda wins both performance and quality awards from J.D. Power. And with cars like the Miata RF, it's no surprise. Every time I see the new Miata on the streets, I am stun-locked. I cannot look away from that thing. They're insanely gorgeous. And heads up, keep an eye out for the 100th anniversary edition Miata coming soon. Now, I know we went at Ford earlier, but they have a sub-brand that's actually become pretty respectable. Contrary to its parent company, Ford, which we've already established produces essentially garbage on wheels, Lincoln actually makes some pretty top-notch vehicles. They rank near the top in almost every category. Performance, dependability, comfort, aesthetics. Lincoln kind of checks all the boxes. I never own one, but they seem to be doing really well. And that's why they've earned a top spot on our list. Speaking of cars old people love, up next we have Buick. On a personal list, this is damn near dead last. But when you look at the data, Buick customers are ecstatic. They are consistently like #1 in customer satisfaction, which is insane. But I refuse to give them the top spot, because as a brand, they have committed to basically making only SUVs and crossovers now, which means they're basically dead to me. Now another brand near the top has safety stitched into nearly every detail. Most people already know that Volvo is synonymous with safety, which is probably why so many Volvo drivers are so satisfied with their cars. They're not dying in them. Now Volvo's had a rough past, but today, they're kind of killing it. In 2018 and 2019, their sales went up like 28%, and it's not unwarranted. Lately, Volvo has been making great, safe, interesting cars, like the Volvo S60, which is safe, reliable, cheap to maintain, and fun to drive. All right, the bronze goes to Volvo. Now for our top 2 spots, it's Brad versus Squid. It's Japan versus Germany. It's reliability versus performance. Sport versus luxury. It's Lexus versus Porsche. And this is almost a tie. Statistically, they're pretty much dead even. So let's give the silver medal to Porsche. With an over 80% customer satisfaction rating, they're killing it. And it's no fluke. Porsche makes fantastic cars. They just revealed the 992 GT3. With over 500 horsepower pumping out of a flat 6, bouncing off a 9,000 RPM redline, combined with a 6-speed manual. It's almost perfect. I definitely know what Brad's getting for Christmas. So hats off to Porsche, they definitely deserve a top spot on this list. But they're not a brand good enough to be in my garage. The only brand that's that good is Lexus. Lexus has risen to be the most trusted brand in North America for a good reason. They never break down. They deliver on their promise to luxury. They're a blast to drive, their exterior design is classy and luxurious, and forward-thinking, with models like the IS300 regularly taking on its German rivals and winning. Today, a Lexus is a force to be reckoned with, for sure. But what makes Lexus the #1 spot here for me is actually that it's the best brand for this channel, for our fans, for you. You see, an old Lexus is still top tier, and we're Ideal Media. We're all about cheap, used old cars. And there's no better buy than a used Lexus. Don't believe me? I bought a used Lexus with a bazillion miles on it. Watch my video up here about why you should buy one too. Or buy yourself a used LS400 with like a bazillion miles on it and see how long it lasts. It'll probably outlast you. Hands down, if you watch this channel and we're talking about the best brands, you should buy a Lexus. New or used. Drop us a comment down below and see where we agree and disagree. I can't wait to read the comments on this one. And while you're down there, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on the little bell, because we're gonna keep bringing you content. I've been the Squid, and as always, keep living the ideal lifestyle.